Hannah never thought she'd end up here, standing at the edge of a cliff, watching the night sky crack open with the strange hum of the time device in her hand. A familiar feeling, a pull, like she was meant to be somewhere else, someone else, somewhere in another life. Her family was just a family. But this was something entirely different. Save them, Hannah, the voice of the mysterious organization had told her, their words cold and distant, a voice she didn't trust. Save your family from the catastrophe. The future depends on it. The problem, the catastrophe they wanted her to stop, the tragedy that would bring her family's political empire to its knees, wasn't some random event. It wasn't a simple accident or an inevitable disaster. No, it was something darker, something far more calculated. She was sent back to 1997 to prevent the untimely death of her father. At least, that's what she'd been told. But that wasn't the whole story. She hadn't known the truth, not yet. Hannah had grown up with the belief that her family was powerful, noble. They were the kind of people who shaped the city, controlled the media, and owned more than just wealth. They controlled lives. She'd been proud of them, but now she was beginning to see how wrong she'd been. As the device began to glow, the shadows of the past seemed to stretch into her future. She couldn't shake the feeling that something about this was all wrong. She was the pawn, but who was moving the pieces? Time travel wasn't supposed to feel like this. The moment she arrived back in 1997, she was hit with a sense of déjà vu so intense it nearly knocked her off her feet. The street lights were too bright, the air too thick. It was like stepping into a dream, too real, yet too surreal at the same time. She was standing in front of the grand mansion that had been her family's home for generations, the one place she'd once thought of as safe. But now it felt foreign, as if she were trespassing in a history she was never meant to be a part of. The device hummed in her pocket, a constant reminder of the mission at hand: prevent the death of her father. But the more she wandered the halls, observing the younger versions of her relatives, the smug, manipulative cousins, the overly confident uncles, the cruel aunt who loved playing the game of power, the more she began to notice things. It wasn't just the political empire her family controlled, it was their control over everything. They manipulated people, events, lives. They had always been prepared to make a sacrifice, even if it meant causing pain to their own. As she wandered through the grand library, Hannah stumbled upon a dusty journal. Its pages yellowed with age. Opening it, she recognized the handwriting immediately. It was her great-grandfather's. The words jumped off the page with an icy chill. The family's success lies in the pain of others. The tragedy must be set into motion. It will strengthen us. No one must know the truth. The time will come, and we will have control over both the present and the future. We will make history. Her heart skipped a beat. The tragedy, the one she was supposed to stop, had been planned. Her own family had orchestrated it, and she was nothing but a pawn in their game. It was a late evening when she first saw him. Ethan, her cousin, though she had no idea he would be the one to turn her world upside down. He was younger than she remembered, more charming, and with a dangerous glint in his eyes. He was just like the stories said, manipulative but charming enough to make people fall into his trap. She had always known he was different, but she'd never realized how deep his manipulation ran until now. He walked toward her, a smirk curling on his lips as though he knew she was here, knew she'd be coming for answers. "Fancy seeing you here, Hannah," he said, his voice low and seductive. There was a hint of something else in his eyes, something that didn't sit right. "I've been waiting for you." "Waiting for me?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "I don't know what you're talking about." Ethan took a step closer. "You don't know yet, do you? About the game we're playing. About the tragedy your family planned." Her breath caught in her throat. He knew. "Everything," he whispered, "is a choice. And you, Hannah, are the key to it all." The connection between them was undeniable, and for a moment she felt herself slipping. Her heart raced and a strange warmth spread through her. Was it attraction, or was it the poison of his words? The tension between them thickened, but it wasn't just physical. There was something darker, a temptation she couldn't yet understand. She knew this wasn't a coincidence. Ethan wasn't just charming. He was dangerous. It was that night that Hannah learned the first true lesson of time travel. History was never as clean as she'd been told. She stood at the crossroads, the choice heavy in her hands. Her father's fate loomed ahead. The time device in her pocket pulsed with urgency, reminding her of the ticking clock. But there was something else, something more pressing than simply saving her father. A voice in her head whispered, "You've already changed the timeline, Hannah. Nothing is ever as it seems." She looked up to see Ethan watching her from across the room, his smirk still in place. "I know what you're thinking," he said, his eyes glinting. "But you're not saving him, you're saving yourself. The power we've worked for, our family's empire, it will all collapse if you undo it." Hannah's heart pounded. She had no idea how to respond. Was he right? Was she really here to prevent her family's downfall, or was she meant to become part of their twisted plan? "Do you want to save your father?" Ethan's voice was smooth, dangerous. "Or do you want to finally see how far you're willing to go to get what you deserve?" Hannah felt a knot of confusion and desire tighten within her. Ethan's words echoed in her mind like a deadly lullaby, each one pulling her deeper into his game. The weight of her family's hidden history threatened to swallow her whole. She had come back to stop a death, to fix things, to set right a tragedy that was yet to unfold. But the closer she got to her mission, the more it became clear everything she'd been told was a lie. In the cold silence of her room, the time device pulsed again. The soft hum made her skin prickle, reminding her that time was moving, that it was slipping away, and yet she was tangled in a net of secrets and lies. The device had a terrible power to change everything, but was it meant to be used for good, or was she simply another tool in a much larger, more sinister plan? The more she uncovered, the more the pieces seemed to fit together in horrifying ways. Her family wasn't just politically influential, they were ruthless. They had shaped history, bent it to their will, and used Hannah's ancestors as pawns to cement their power. Her great-grandfather's journal was clear. A tragedy must occur. It will give us control over everything, over the future itself. And then there was Ethan, her cousin, her family, the man who had wormed his way into her mind and heart. She didn't know if it was his charm or the force of his words that pulled her in, but it was undeniable. He had a hold over her. The lines between what was right and wrong, what was meant to happen and what she could change, were blurring. And just as Hannah's mind reeled with the weight of her decisions, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a message from the mysterious organization that had sent her here. "Your mission remains unchanged. Don't trust anyone, not even your family." The next day, the shadows of doubt grew thicker. Ethan had been unusually quiet since their last conversation, but the tension between them simmered like a slow-burning fuse. That evening, he appeared at her door without warning, his smile like a predator's. "You've been avoiding me," he said, stepping into the room as if he owned it. Hannah didn't have the heart to deny it. She hadn't known what to say to him, how to even begin to navigate the strange and dark connection they shared. But now, faced with him in her space, the attraction, the undeniable chemistry between them, was too potent to ignore. "I need answers, Ethan. You know more about this than you're letting on," she said, her voice steady, though her heart raced. She wasn't sure if it was because of the mystery of the situation, or because of him. He leaned in closer, the air between them thick with unspoken words. "You think you want answers, but the truth will destroy you, Hannah. You're not ready for it." Before she could respond, he placed a finger on her lips, silencing her. His touch was gentle, but there was a force behind it that sent a shiver down her spine. "You've already made your choice, you know," he continued, his eyes burning into hers. "The tragedy you came to stop. It's already in motion, and you're part of it now." Hannah's breath caught. "What do you mean?" Ethan smiled darkly. "There's no going back. Not now. You've already crossed the line, just like the rest of us." He turned as if to leave, but then looked back over his shoulder. "I'm inviting you to join us. All the power, all the control, everything you've ever wanted at your fingertips. Just say yes, and we'll rewrite the future together. But if you don't, well then the tragedy will unfold just as it was meant to, and you'll never know what could have been." He didn't wait for her response. He walked out of the room, leaving behind a cloud of uncertainty, a sense of doom. Hannah's mind raced in the hours after Ethan's visit. What did he mean by "you've already crossed the line"? She couldn't deny it, something had changed inside her. The power she felt when Ethan touched her, when he whispered those dangerous words, had left a mark. It was as though the moment she arrived in this timeline, she'd become a part of a much larger game. A game in which her choices didn't just shape her future, but the future of her entire family. But the further she ventured into the depths of this twisted world, the more she began to understand her own power. It wasn't just the device that allowed her to travel through time. She was starting to feel time bend around her. Little moments, fragments of different realities, flashes of possible futures, things were changing. She was changing. The whispers in her head grew louder. Could she manipulate time herself? Could she control the past, the present, the future? In the dead of night, when the mansion was asleep, Hannah sat in front of the device. The temptation to use it, to rewrite the entire course of history, pulsed within her. But what if doing so meant losing everything she had known? What if this tragedy, the one she had been sent to stop, had always been meant to happen? Her family's empire was built on the foundation of lies, manipulation, and sacrifice. She had seen it in the journals, heard it in their whispers. But could she be the one to stop it? Or would she fall victim to the same cycle, bound to repeat the sins of the past? By the time Hannah saw Ethan again, she was no longer the same woman who had walked into the mansion just a few days ago. Her thoughts were clearer, her mind sharper, and yet the weight of what she had learned pressed down on her like 1,000 bricks. She found him standing in the garden, looking as effortless as ever, as if he had all the time in the world. The sight of him, so calm, so sure of himself, only made her more determined. "You were right," she said, her voice cold but resolute. "I'm not here to fix things, I'm here to take control." Ethan turned to face her, his lips curling into that dangerous smile. "I knew you would see things my way. You were always part of the plan, weren't you?" Hannah asked, stepping closer. "All of you. Every single one of you was involved in this tragedy." Ethan's expression flickered, but only for a moment. He didn't answer. Hannah took a step forward, the device heavy in her pocket. "You wanted to make me part of this, but I'm done being anyone's pawn. I'm taking control of my own destiny." Ethan didn't move, but his eyes darkened. "You can't. You've already lost." Hannah felt the power in her hand, the device humming like an extension of herself. The future was hers to shape. But in that moment, she realized the brutal truth. There was no escape from the past. The night was the final turning point. The night where everything that had been set into motion, all the choices, all the manipulation, everything came to a head. Hannah stood in front of her father's office, the device glowing faintly in her hand. She could hear his voice on the other side of the door, deep and calm as always. The man who was about to die. This was the moment she had traveled for. To save him, to fix the future. But as she stood there, a new question arose. What would it cost? The past would never be the same again, no matter what she chose. The family, the power, the destruction, it was all interconnected. And if she saved her father, would she be saving herself, or condemning them both? She took a deep breath, stepped forward, and opened the door. Hannah had made her choice. She'd never been one to follow the rules, never been one to simply obey. She wasn't going to let her family's dark history define her. But as she stepped into her father's office, the weight of what she had done, of the path she had chosen, hit her like a tidal wave. "You did it, didn't you?" her father asked, his voice not full of surprise, but of understanding. Her heart clenched, knowing that, in saving him, she had condemned her family to something far worse. The future, it seemed, had already been rewritten. And Hannah realized with chilling clarity, there was no escaping the past. The device hummed one final time, and the world she had known slipped away. The room seemed to tilt, as Hannah's mind raced, the weight of her decision sinking deeper. The moment she'd opened the door, she'd expected some revelation, some sense of closure. Instead, the world felt heavier. The air, thick with the aftermath of her choice, seemed to pulse with an unfamiliar rhythm. Her father stood there, waiting calm, collected, as if he'd known all along what she'd do. He didn't move when she entered, didn't flinch at her presence, just stood there, watching her. "Dad," she said, her voice strained. I had to do it. I didn't want to let this happen. I held up his hand, silencing her. I know, Hannah, I've been watching you. You think you changed something, but you didn't. You never did. Her stomach twisted. What do you mean? You really thought you could undo the tragedy, that you could save me, save the family, he said softly, but there was something cold in his voice. The tragedy wasn't something we were trying to avoid, Hannah, it was always a part of the plan. Hannah felt her heart drop. The truth she had been so desperately searching for seemed to crash down around her. She had been so sure, so certain, that if she saved him, she could change the course of history. But it was all a lie. Her father's lips curved into something like a smile, but it was filled with too much bitterness to be genuine. Your great-grandfather's journal was never meant for you to find, but you did. You were always meant to find it, and to believe you had a choice. What do you mean? She whispered, her mind reeling. You were never supposed to save me, Hannah. You were always meant to be the catalyst. To ensure that the family legacy would continue. The tragedy, it wasn't a tragedy for us. It was a stepping stone, a moment to seize more power, more control. The realization hit her like a blow to the chest. She had been manipulated from the very beginning, a pawn in a game she had never fully understood. All along, she had been used to solidify the very empire her ancestors had built, and the price of that empire was the betrayal of everything she thought was real. You knew? Her voice broke as she stepped back, her mind struggling to comprehend the enormity of the lie. He nodded, stepping closer. I knew, and so did they. We all knew. You were born into this, Hannah. You were born to play your part. All your life, you've been trained to believe in a world that isn't real. A world where we control time, where we control everything. A sickening realization spread through her. Ethan. The way he'd always been there, guiding her, pulling her closer. He had been part of it all, just like her father, just like the rest of them. He had used their connection to play her, to ensure that she would fulfill her role. Her breath came in shallow gasps, as the world around her seemed to collapse. She had always known something wasn't right. The power that pulsed through her, the strange alterations to time, the way things had begun to feel different since she arrived. It had all been part of a design. A design to make her believe she was changing history, to make her believe she was saving her family when, in reality, she was cementing their control over the future. You're all just monsters, she whispered, almost to herself, her hands trembling. The weight of her actions crashed down on her. All of you used me. Her father reached out, placing a cold hand on her shoulder. No, Hannah, you were never used. You were chosen. You were born into greatness. She shook his hand off, stepping away from him. I don't want this. I don't want your empire. I don't want your power. But as the words left her lips, the device in her pocket began to hum again, stronger now, a low, almost sinister vibration that felt like it was alive, as if it had a will of its own. And in that moment, a chilling thought crossed her mind. Was she ever truly in control of her destiny? Or had she always been part of a far grander scheme? Hannah took a step back, staring at the device. It seemed to throb with energy, as though it was waiting for her to make a decision. Her father watched her carefully, the corner of his lips curling into a smile that was both patient and knowing. You think you have a choice, but you've always had one path, one role to play. Your powers, they've been awakened because of the device, because of your bloodline. Time, reality, all of it, it bends to you. It bends to us. Her father's words sank into her like poison. All this time, the device hadn't just been a tool. It had been a way for her to tap into the very fabric of time itself, to alter history. Her family hadn't just created it for control, they had made it for manipulation, and the one who could control it was her. Do you understand now, Hannah? He continued. You were always meant to take your place, not as the savior, but as the one who ensures that we, our family, remain in power. We created this empire, and you'll be the one to secure its future. The words hit her hard, and for the first time, she truly felt the weight of her family's legacy, their empire built on manipulation, death, and power. Everything had been part of the plan, even her own existence, and that, more than anything, made her feel sick. But as her gaze fell to the device in her hand, something stirred inside her. The power that had been latent within her all along, something primal, something dangerous, began to awaken. For a moment, she stood still, overwhelmed by the realization that she was more powerful than any of them. She could manipulate time, she could erase the past, alter the future, and bend history to her will. The power was hers, and with it came a dark promise, a promise to change everything. Could she break free from her family's influence? Or would she become the very thing she feared? In the dead of night, as the mansion slept, Hannah found herself standing before the massive ornate mirror in the hallway. She stared at her reflection, the flickering candlelight casting shadows that made her appear almost like a stranger. The woman in the mirror was no longer just a victim. She wasn't the same innocent girl who had been sent back to fix the past. She was a force. Her fingers tightened around the device, the hum growing louder, like an invitation. The truth was undeniable now. She had power, real power, and the decision lay before her. She could rewrite history, eliminate the tragedy, save herself from her family's control, or she could embrace it all and take the throne she had never asked for. You can't change the past, she muttered to herself, but you can control the future. As if on cue, the door behind her creaked open, and Ethan stepped into the room, his dark eyes locking onto hers. There was something about him that still tugged at her, a pull she couldn't deny. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice a whisper in the quiet. "Ready for what?" she replied, without turning to face him. "Ready to take your place at the helm. The future is yours to command, Hannah." She finally turned to face him, her eyes narrowing. "And what happens to me if I don't?" Ethan's smile softened, but it was far from comforting. "You won't have a choice. Not anymore. You're already a part of this. You always have been." Hannah stood still for a moment, the weight of his words sinking in. She had already made her choice. There was no turning back now. The future was in her hands. But was it hers to shape, or was it already written? The answer would come, but only in time. The device in her hand thrummed louder, and as she looked into Ethan's eyes, she realized something profound. She was the future, her family's empire, their manipulation of time, the tragedy that had been orchestrated. It was all part of a cycle she had been destined to break. But what would she choose? Would she fall into the abyss of their control, or would she shatter everything to claim her own destiny? The decision was hers alone. With a final trembling breath, Hannah pressed the device, and time began to twist around her. And so Hannah's journey ended, perhaps not as a savior, but as the architect of a new world. The family she was sent to protect, they were nothing more than shadows now, erased from history in a single sweeping moment. The future had been rewritten, but was it for the better? The question, like time itself, would never have a clear answer.